and gentlemen, after 5 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for decision. All 3 judges score this contest 50-44 for the winner by unanimous decision, and no!
UFC 319 was supposed to be just another title fight, but what happened behind the scenes turned into the biggest scandal of 2025. We're talking about mysterious weigh-in drama, record-breaking performances, and a confession that nobody saw coming. So let's start at the beginning. August 16th, 2025, the United Center in Chicago was buzzing with energy like I've never seen before. This wasn't just any UFC event. This was being called the Fight of the Year before it even happened. The main event, Dricus du Plessis defending his middleweight championship against Khamzat Chimaev. Now, if you know anything about MMA, you know this matchup was absolutely insane. Du Plessis, the pride of South Africa, had been talking non-stop about how he was going to shut down Chimaev's hype train once and for all. But Chimaev, this man was being called the future of the sport. Fans everywhere were saying he was unstoppable, that nobody could handle his wrestling and pressure. The internet was going crazy with debates about who would win. Chicago made everything even more intense. If you've ever been to a fight in Chicago, you know these fans don't mess around. They're loud, they're passionate, and they'll let you know exactly how they feel. The atmosphere was electric. You could literally feel the tension building all week long. Social media was blowing up. ESPN was covering it non-stop. Even people who don't usually watch UFC were talking about this fight. It felt like one of those moments where history was about to be made. Little did we know, the real drama would start before the fighters even stepped into the Octagon. Now, here's where things get really interesting. August 15th, weigh-in day. Usually, weigh-ins are pretty straightforward, right? Fighters step onto the scale, they hit their weight, pose for photos, and we're good to go. But something was different about UFC 319. Early that morning, rumors started spreading like wildfire. Nobody was saying names at first, but people were whispering that one of the main event fighters might be having serious trouble making weight. The weigh-in schedule got delayed, which immediately made everyone suspicious. Then the media started noticing weird stuff. Reporters were talking about how the fighters looked different than usual. Some were saying they saw evidence of extreme weight-cutting methods. You know, those dangerous techniques fighters sometimes use when they're desperately trying to make weight. When the official weigh-ins finally started, both du Plessis and Chimaev made their weights. But here's the thing. Neither of them would talk about what happened behind the scenes. They just stayed completely silent about the whole situation. This silence made everything worse. Fans started creating their own theories. Some said the UFC was protecting their golden boy. Others claimed du Plessis looked completely drained and that's why he stayed quiet. Social media exploded with conspiracy theories, slow-motion analysis of the weigh-in footage, and heated debates about whether something shady was going on. But wait, it gets worse. Right before the main card started, 2 major fights got canceled. I'm talking about fights that fans have been looking forward to for months. First, King Green had to pull out of his fight against Diego Ferreira. Green posted this heartbreaking message on Instagram showing himself looking devastated, saying, "I can't even walk." This is a guy who's known for fighting through pain, for never backing down, so when he pulled out, you knew it was serious. Then just hours later, the Ultimate Fighter 33 finale between Rodrigo Cezinando and Daniil Donchenko got canceled due to a fight week injury. Nobody even knew which fighter got hurt at first. These back-to-back cancellations completely changed the vibe of UFC 319. Suddenly, what was supposed to be a stacked card felt thin. Fans were frustrated, fighters were disappointed, and the UFC had to scramble to reorganize everything. For the fighters who lost their spots, this wasn't just about missing the spotlight. This was about missing their paychecks. In the UFC, you don't get paid unless you actually fight. So these guys had trained for months, cut weight, done all the promotion, and walked away with nothing. 2 days before the fight, the pre-fight press conference was already getting heated. All the fighters were sitting on stage, answering questions from fans and media. Everything seemed normal until Eric Nolan grabbed his microphone. Nolan was supposed to fight Baisangor Susurkayev on the prelims. Instead of talking about their upcoming fight, Nolan decided to cross the line. He looked right at Susurkayev and said, "I know he is Khamzat Chimaev's little buddy, but he is not Khamzat Chimaev." The room went dead silent for a second, and then all hell broke loose. Chimaev, who was sitting just a few seats away, slammed his hands on the table and fired back. "He is better than me, bruh. He will knock you out. Don't panic." The crowd absolutely exploded. People were cheering, laughing, and you could feel the energy completely shift. This wasn't just trash talk anymore. This was personal. What made this moment so powerful was the loyalty Chimaev showed. He didn't just defend his teammate, he put his own reputation on the line, saying Susurkayev was even better than him. That's the kind of brotherhood you rarely see in MMA. Speaking of Baisangor Susurkayev, this guy's story is absolutely incredible. Just 1 week before UFC 319, he wasn't even in the UFC. He was fighting on Dana White's Contender Series, trying to earn a contract like hundreds of other hopeful fighters. His opponent was Murtaza Taya Ali, and everyone expected a competitive fight. Instead, Susurkayev delivered one of the most brutal knockouts of the entire season. He threw a perfectly timed body kick that caught Ali right in the ribs. Ali dropped like he'd been shot, writhing in pain on the canvas. Dana White was so impressed that he gave Susurkayev a UFC contract on the spot. But here's the crazy part. Instead of waiting for his debut, the UFC immediately put him on the UFC 319 card. 1 week from unknown prospect to fighting on one of the biggest cards of the year. But Susurkayev wasn't just there to fill a spot. He became a crucial part of Chimaev's training camp. These two guys, both from similar backgrounds, formed this incredible bond. They trained together, pushed each other, and developed this brotherhood that you could see whenever they were together. When the cage door finally closed for the main event, all the drama, all the speculation, all the controversy just melted away. What happened next was pure, brutal domination from Khamzat Chimaev. From the very first second, Chimaev showed he had no interest in feeling things out or taking his time. He charged forward like a man possessed, immediately closing the distance and dragging du Plessis to the ground. And once he got him there, it was over. Chimaev's wrestling was on another level. Every time du Plessis tried to get up, Chimaev dragged him back down. Every time du Plessis tried to create space, Chimaev smothered him. It was like watching a masterclass in ground control. But here's where it gets really crazy. While Chimaev was completely dominating du Plessis, he started talking. Not trash talk, not insults, actual conversation. Cameras picked up him saying things like, "Good job, work harder guys," to du Plessis at his corner. The crowd didn't know how to react. Some people were laughing, others were shocked. Here was a guy not just winning a title fight, but doing it so easily that he had time to chat with his opponent. It was surreal. The striking numbers were insane. Chimaev landed 529 total strikes, the highest ever recorded in UFC history for a single fight. He controlled du Plessis on the ground for over 21 minutes. The scorecards were 50-44 across the board. After the fight ended and Chimaev got the belt wrapped around his waist, something special happened that nobody expected. His coach walked over and tied a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt around his waist right there in the Octagon. Now, this isn't something you see every day. Getting a black belt in BJJ is like getting a PhD. It takes years, sometimes decades, of dedicated training. Most fighters get promoted in private, in their home gym, surrounded by their teammates. But doing it right there, in front of millions of fans, after dominating a title fight with his ground game, that was pure poetry. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. You could see the emotion on Chimaev's face as the coach tied his belt. This wasn't just about winning a UFC title. This was recognition for years of hard work, dedication, and constantly improving his craft. Some fans thought it was too theatrical, like it was staged for the cameras. But most people saw it for what it was. A beautiful moment, recognizing a fighter who had just proven his grappling skills against the best in the world. In the post-fight press conference, everyone wanted answers. The weigh-in controversy, the talking during the fight, the complete domination. Reporters had a million questions. When someone asked Chimaev about what he had said during the fight, his answer was so casual, it was almost shocking. "I just spoke with him, spoke with his coach in the middle of the fight," he said with a smile. "I told them, good job, work harder, guys." The way he said it was incredible. Here was a guy who had just won a UFC title in dominant fashion, and he was talking about it like it was a normal training session. No ego, no boasting, just pure confidence. Analysts couldn't agree on what it meant. Some saw it as psychological warfare. By talking so casually, he was showing du Plessis that he wasn't even close to being in trouble. Others thought it showed his genuine love for fighting. He was so comfortable that he could afford to be encouraging while dominating. For most fans, it was just another sign that Chimaev was operating on a completely different level. This wasn't just physical dominance. This was mental dominance too. He was so far ahead that he could treat a title fight like a friendly sparring session. While everyone was talking about Chimaev's incredible performance, there was another story happening: the devastating experience of Dricus du Plessis. For nearly 25 minutes, he was trapped under one of the most suffocating fighters in MMA history. Imagine being in front of thousands of screaming fans with millions more watching around the world, and you can't do anything. Every escape attempt gets shut down. Every time you try to create space, you get dragged back down. That was du Plessis' reality for almost the entire fight. His corner kept trying to motivate him between rounds. They reminded him of his past comebacks, told him to stay patient, look for openings, but nothing worked. You could see the frustration building on his face with each passing round. By the fourth round, his body language said everything. His shoulders were slumped, his face was swollen, and you could see in his eyes that he knew the belt was slipping away. This wasn't just losing a fight, this was losing everything he had worked for. After the fight, du Plessis kept things respectful, but you could see the heartbreak. He didn't make excuses, he didn't complain about controversy. He just had to accept that he had been completely outclassed by a better fighter on that night. When the official statistics came out, UFC 319 wasn't just a fight, it was a piece of MMA history. The numbers from Chimaev's performance were absolutely staggering. 529 total strikes landed. Let me put that in perspective for you. Most dominant 5-round fights see around 200 to 300 strikes landed. Chimaev nearly doubled the previous records. Every round, the numbers just kept climbing as he threw elbows, punches, and short shots from the ground. Then there was the ground control time, 21 minutes and 40 seconds. That's basically 4 full rounds where du Plessis was stuck on his back, unable to get up. For anyone who knows grappling, keeping someone down for that long requires incredible skill and conditioning. The scorecards told the rest of the story, 50-44 across all 3 judges. In championship fights, even when someone loses clearly, they usually manage to win at least 1 round. Not here. This was as one-sided as title fights get. Fans immediately started comparing it to some of the most dominant performances in UFC history. People were mentioning Khabib's best fights, John Jones in his prime, Anderson Silva's legendary runs. That's the level of dominance we're talking about. After watching that performance, Dana White was grinning from ear to ear at the post-fight press conference. He called it one of the most dominant title wins he had ever seen. But Dana, being Dana, he wasn't just celebrating, he was already planning the future. He dropped a huge hint about UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi, suggesting that Chimaev might defend his title there if everything went smoothly. The business sense was obvious. Chimaev's connections to the Middle East, plus his growing popularity, would make it a massive event. For the UFC, expanding globally has been a huge priority. Big events in Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia bring in not just fans, but major sponsorship money. Having a dominant new champion like Chimaev headline there would be perfect for their international strategy. But there were risks too. Title fights usually need months of preparation and recovery time. Pushing Chimaev into another main event so quickly could lead to injuries or a less impressive performance, which might kill all this momentum they had built. In the days following UFC 319, the MMA world couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed. The performance was so dominant that it completely shifted how people viewed the entire middleweight division. Subscribe for more MMA content and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos.